Hi, guys. This is David with Roastify, and this is the Roastify Founders Series. This is a show where we interview other Roastify users to talk about the businesses and the platforms they're building in the coffee industry. Whether you're just starting out on your coffee journey or you've been selling coffee for years, we hope these conversations are insightful and encouraging as you build your business. Today with me, we have a very special guest. Austin Petersen is not only an entrepreneur, but he's a media innovator. He's a political commentator, a former presidential candidate, a former senatorial candidate. He's the founder of the For Liberty Network and the host of the Wake Up America show that airs every morning, Monday through Friday. Most importantly, he is also the founder of Founding Flavors, a coffee brand that he sells, and he's been working together with Roastify for the past 2 years as he's built this business. He's insightful on everything from entrepreneurship to history to politics, and we really hope that you enjoy our conversation. With that, let's get into the interview. All right, so with us today is Austin Petersen. Austin, in the introduction, I gave an overview, a high-level overview. You have a very interesting background and story, and before we dive into the details of coffee and your coffee company, maybe you could give folks just some background on who you are and what you're up to and what you've built.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you, David, and I hope that your listeners get some value out of this, as much value as I've gotten out of selling coffee for almost 2 years. I think you were looking at it at my history, but personally, I've been active as a sort of community organizer for a number of years. I operate a podcast network. I used to have just one show, but just recently I launched 2 more shows that I oversee and am producing to try and grow my media empire. And a lot of the success of monetizing my content has come not through advertisings and sponsorships and things like that, although that is part of my podcasting strategy, but it's so important to be able to offer something to your customers to sell, because advertising can be so fickle. But when you have a really good, high quality product that you can offer to your audience, you can really monetize your content well. So people ask me what I do. I mean, it depends on who asks, right? I guess what I do now is a full-time content creation business. It does have other aspects of it, but my background is as a television producer, and I've been the host of a radio program in Jefferson City, Missouri, where I reside. And I've been a political activist for 20 years, perhaps, maybe even a little bit longer now. And I've built communities over the years, using social media. I've had a lot of ups and downs. I tend to be on the cancellation end of the spectrum more often than not, which actually is why having access to selling my own products is so important, because revenue streams are so fickle. And if you have a voice these days, no matter what you believe, left, right, middle, you can suddenly be at the end of the mob on one day. And so what happens is that when you have a business like mine, it can be particularly vulnerable to not just the whims of the crowd, but you can be vulnerable to changes in the economy and the marketplaces. And the one thing that I think is that big value add for my customers, because I sell other products, standard merch, is that coffee, that especially because Roastify is so high quality too, is that it's a commodity that people, if they like it, they will come back to you time and time again. So you can really create a sense of loyalty with your customers when you serve them high quality products that can help you weather the storms that your competitors might be facing or struggling with. And I've learned a lot of lessons over the years about how to deal with customers and clients and how to scale business. And I consider myself an entrepreneur, maybe a dad first and then an entrepreneur. And I'm looking at new ways to grow and monetize my shows and my content into the future. But really, it's all about branding and marketing. Anybody can start a business that does a single task. Excuse me. My wife and I were discussing this the other day because we had a particularly large sale of T-shirts that had come in, and we had a nice profit on that one. But what I was speaking to someone who owned a martial arts studio in town, and it had failed, and it was because despite the fact that they were a good teacher, despite the fact that they had good services, classes were good, they didn't do the marketing and the sales that was necessary to have their business succeed. And anybody can say, put a box of coffee on their website and say, okay, well, now I'm done, right? And wait and sit back. But you really do have to lean forward. You really do have to engage with your customers and your clients. You have to give them a branding experience, a marketing experience. When you're dealing with something, a commodity like coffee especially, you really do have to differentiate yourself somehow and stand out from the crowd while also like catering to niches and niching down to an extent, and also sometimes even saying no to customers or clients. That can be one of the most difficult things because there will be a lot of demands that customers or clients can make, and you have to learn even when to say no. I'm not the right supplier for you. I'm not your guy. Like, I get a lot of questions about my coffee's price, but I never get any questions or complaints about the taste. so you have to,
that's fair.
Yeah, you have to be willing to say no. You have to be light on your feet, be willing to change. But honestly, I say anybody can have a successful business, but not everybody's willing to do it. But at the end of the day, what am I doing? Selling coffee like everybody else. What makes me different is that I sell, I market, I get my products in front of the customers, and I ask them to buy it. And I think that last step, most people really struggle with it. They're not willing to they're willing to do absolutely everything, all the branding and make everything beautiful, but they're not willing to walk out amongst the people and rub shoulders and say, will you buy this?
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting point. As we said in the introduction, your background, you've done many different things. You were a presidential candidate in 2016. You were a senatorial candidate in 2018. You've built multiple different media networks, including the Wake Up America show that you're doing now, and other podcasts that you're overseeing and things like that. But maybe that's one thing that you could kind of encourage listeners with is that idea of community building. That idea you're kind of mentioning, like rubbing shoulders with people, and kind of how you viewed that in your career of everything from the political side that you've done, but also from the entrepreneurial side. How do you really build that community of people? We always like to say that coffee is kind of like the quintessential community builder. You go and have a cup of coffee with somebody, you sit down and have a conversation with somebody over a cup of coffee. But how do you kind of conceptualize that, or how have you in your career as far as building that community and building the followings that you've built and things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? So a lot of times marketers or sellers or e-commerce people, they won't even take time to learn their customers' names. And the advantage if you have a podcast, especially, is because you'll see their username in the chat. They may send you like a YouTube super chat. They might donate to you, or if they buy in the first place, obviously, hey, there's somebody who's should definitely know their name and look them in the eyes and call them by name, and be willing to call people on the phone, to do the old school techniques or tactics of to talk to people like they're normal human beings. They're not just objects for you to run a credit card. These are living, breathing human beings that are making decisions to buy from you when they could go anywhere else. Ask them, why did you choose me, right? Why did you choose to buy from me? And you, these days, you don't have to be Joe Rogan size to make good money. And I know people who make lots of money with very, very small shows, but having a podcast or some communication method with your customer that allows you to know them personally, he'll help you to differentiate and to stand out, because people make decisions typically on purchases of how they feel about you, right? If they don't like you, they're probably not going to buy from you. They have to like you first. And some people will see your brand and like your brand, and they won't see you. And they might like the brand and they might buy from you if you just target them at the right spot. But you have to be willing to engage people in old school ways. I actually had a really interesting conversation with one of my hosts of a new show that I just launched. And she was keen to start controversy right away, to engage with community. She was keen to engage with sort of negative communities online that are known for being highly active, right? They're very engaged. There's this thing that people will say sometimes, that your haters pay your bills, because maybe you'll get a lot of views. You'll get a lot of views on a show because you made everybody really angry. But if those people are really angry, are they going to buy from you? And maybe you made like $100 or something on the video, just the advertising revenue alone, but that money just comes and then it goes. You're not creating longer term revenue streams. I told her, I was like, you've got already 4 or 5 people, because I set up merchandise collections for their shows on my shop to kind of like grow my community. And so people who like her show, who like her content, can go there and buy all of her themed merchandise for her show. And I said, you've already had 4 or 5 people who have bought from you, from your collection. They already like you. They already like your show. We know their names, their numbers, we have their email addresses. I go, rather than try and engage with this amorphous blob of angry people throwing rocks, you just to try and stir up attention, engage directly with people who like you and build positive, healthy relationships over the long term. I even told her, like, in my early days of my career, I made enemies that I shouldn't have made, and you can't get out of life without making some enemies, or else if you don't stand for anything. But the you don't need to make any more than you really need. You should focus on building positive and healthy relationships. And so for 10, 15 years, one of the biggest, most important things I try and focus on, and trust me, I fail at it a lot, but I always try and recalibrate, is to build healthy, positive relationships, healthy, positive communities, be willing to trim the hedges of your communities, and bring in positive people who are self-reinforcing. If you can avoid an echo chamber, that's even better, but that can be hard when you build like sort of insular communities that are less prone. It's not that you're not prone to criticism. You can be criticized by these people, hopefully, to keep an open mind. A lot of people create like scams that are very cult of personality, and it's like, buy my products or get out, right? And but I really think that you flourish over the long term when you create healthy, voluntary communities, free people making free decisions, purchasing from you because they know you, they like you, they know your name. I try and create products that if they sit on your shelf, you're happy to have them there, right? I've got I 3D print these little Donald Trump Buddhas, for example, and love Trump or hate. I have people who don't like Trump, but they buy the Donald Trump Buddhas because there's just something very zen about them. Right, and I have my little French bulldogs that I 3D print to make beautiful things to help inspire me, and I sell these to my customers as well. But
yeah,
I try and have a positive spirit.
Yeah, one thing I kind of hear you saying there, is that idea of kind of quality over quantity, of the quality of the people that you're putting into your community, and that you're engaging with, and the quality in which you engage them. Are you, like you said, calling them by name? Or are you reaching out to them? Are you, thankful that they are spending their time, talking to you or engaging with you on the platforms, rather than just trying to shotgun approach? I need to have, thousands and thousands and thousands of people following me, for this to be a success type of thing. But that quality versus quantity kind of perspective is kind of healthy for people.
Yes, and you see people sometimes. I've seen it before. Business owners like, you're not going to buy anything, then I have no use for you, right? But I've had so many people who, all they could do was click. Austin, I'm out of work right now. All I can do is click like and share your content with my friends, and it's like, great, bud, thank you so much. And engage with, treat them the same as you would somebody I try and treat everybody that I interact with or work with the same that I would treat a client who's giving me a $10,000 check, right? I try and treat everybody that way. It's like, the people who go to restaurants and they treat waiters poorly, right? I hate that, right? So I guess it's maybe it's egalitarianish, but I think it's also in your own best interest to do that, because you never know, the waiter today is your boss next week. The people who I've been kind to, who like, they're down and out, they don't have any money today, have come back 6 months later and be like, I'm flush with cash, Austin. You were totally cool to me, FYI. Here's let me buy a beer on Rumble Rant or a Super Chat on YouTube, or let me buy a shirt, or let me buy the boxes of coffee, Austin. because, we like you and, you were nice to us and kind to us when we had nothing that we could give you. Always try and treat people with respect, no matter, you never know. I told my podcasters this, I said, never attack your audience. I don't care if they're attacking you. I don't care if they're hateful for you. I don't care if they say the most personal. I said, don't let people get under your skin. I said, whatever you do, just always try and treat people with respect as much as you can. I know it's hard, and I don't even, for all I have fallen short on this. I said, but learn from my mistakes. I try and tell people, try and return, anger or hostility with kindness, and you will be surprised. You will be surprised at how people may change their views or opinions about you. And that's all fine and good, but when we're talking about things like making money in entrepreneurship, there's a real reason to do it. It's in your best interest to do it, to treat your customers well, because competition is fierce. They can go absolutely anywhere. Mm-hmm. Why should they buy from you? There has to be something that differentiates you from everybody else who's offering the same product.
Yeah, absolutely. In talking to the product, I have a couple of your boxes here. They're actually some of our favorites. We got the Jefferson and the Adams, and I don't think I have. I got George Washington here as well.
Nice.
They're awesome designs, and we love them. And so maybe you could talk to people a little bit about as they develop the community. And as you kind of find your niche, which I think obviously is one of the most important things in entrepreneurship, is how do you find your niche? Who are you targeting with your brand? And then out of that, you're developing the brand, and you have Founding Flavors, which is obviously it's very on brand for you and for the content that you produce. But maybe you could talk a little bit about how you came up with the name, how you came up with the designs. And how that kind of fit together with the communities that you've been building.
Sure. People are begging me it's holidays are coming up and they're begging me to return Martha's Mint, by the way, the peppermint. They loved it.
Yep,
they're the holidays, Martha Washington. So of course, it's very on brand. It's part of who I am. I'm very inspired by history, and I talk about history a lot. And so my coffee brand, I think, there are a lot of patriotic coffee brands out there. Like, you'd be shocked at how many people out there kind of like use Americana to sell their product, and for a lot of people it is very successful. So how do you sort of stand out by branding yourself in such a way? I think a lot of patriotic brands, for example, they kind of tend to be a little bit more, I don't know what's the word, serious. They're very serious, right? It's very, and listen, I love a good machine gun as much as the next American, but it's rather than scary. If I have a machine gun, it's kind of like, it's a pink machine gun, right? Or it's a cute machine gun. Or it's, if you go to my website, you'll find on the front page pillows that are in the shape of machine guns. And so it's a little bit more of it's cheeky, right? It's maybe a little bit more cute. It's a little more tongue in cheek. And so Founding Flavors is cute, right? It's kind of funny and fun. And the titles are fun, right? Rather than blow your head off black rifle coffee, right? It's Jeffersonian Java. It's Madisonian morning. It's Washington's Revolutionary Roast, and Adams's Patriotic Perk, and Thomas's Pain Killer. And so it's got a cheekiness to it. It's a little fun. It's a little silly, but it's still all American, and it still resonates with my audience. And using the technology that's available now to be able to create beautiful brands and things like that. You think that I could have done those designs if I didn't have access to some of the latest and greatest tools? I can't draw like that. I've always been a producer, and I'm a great storyteller, but I don't have like all of the skills in the world. I can't paint and draw and by hand and things like that. So I've been able to utilize some of the new tools that are available in the marketplace to create beautiful, eye-catching designs that capture the spirit of the brand that I'm trying to evoke. And I mean, when these designs first rolled off, the first boxes showed up at our house and I opened them up, I was just so shocked. They were so beautiful. And people who see the boxes, they collect the boxes, and they tell them about, people will go to their houses and see the boxes, and they'll say, I want that just because it looks great on my shelf. So there's that, and that's I mean, that's branding, right? But on the marketing perspective, it's so easy. I have a show. It's called the Wake Up America Show, and it's in the mornings. So what do we do in the mornings? We're drinking coffee. I'm catching my audience. I'm catching my audience when they're thinking about something already, or they're doing something. They're watching my live show and they're thinking about coffee. They're drinking coffee. They're like, well, you know what? Maybe this month I'll splurge on a nice premium box of coffee instead of my regular $5 a bag or something like that. Or maybe this month I'll replace my other major national name brand, who we won't name, on this, and I'll get a box of Austin's coffee. And you should see the reviews on my site. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at that, but 5 stars.
Oh, absolutely.
5
Yeah,
stars.
we love those.
Yeah, and they're hilarious. Some of them are very funny. You think that I would have written myself for marketing, but they're all independent, third-party verified reviews of my coffees. And it just it completes all of like what I do. The coffee is the centerpiece to a large extent of my strategy, because of course we do monthly subscriptions, right? Bi-weekly subscriptions. Of course, it's a revenue stream. But also it's helping us to capture customer data and information. We're remarketing to these customers because we know they like this or such and such. Then we're learning more about them. But in terms of sales, we will typically have like one winning product that will be like some big hit product, whether it's a hat or a shirt or a pillow or whatever it is. And then everything else in the top 5 is always just the coffee, right? Because it's just that thing that people always are going to want. And when somebody buys a t-shirt, they've got the t-shirt. When somebody buys the Buddha, they've got the Buddha. They don't need another one. But when they buy the coffee, they drink the coffee, they like the coffee, they want to come back to coffee. I mean, we spoil people that if I can convince someone to try my coffee for the first time, it spoils them. And they typically will turn into regular customers. It's fun and it's exciting, and I love the feeling of giving someone an experience that they've never had. And also, from end to end, the coffee experience with me is incredible. You get a beautiful box in the mail. It tastes delicious. You want more. You want to come back with more. You want to be a part of the community. And when people walk in your house, if you serve them coffee, what person wouldn't love to be like, would you like a cup of revolutionary roast? Oh my God, it's revolutionary. Yes, of course. Yes, it is a revolution in a cup, right? It's right. And then there's add to that the legacy of the founding fathers dumping tea into the harbor, and it was a patriotic thing. The founding fathers, it was patriotic. Don't drink tea. Coffee is the American beverage, right? We sell coffee mugs that have the pictures of the founders from the things that people like to drink, the mugs that match the branding of the coffee. It's a beautiful synchronicity that occurs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. Like I said, we love the designs. We've been big fans ever since we saw them. So that's been really fun to watch the evolution of it as well. So I guess, the last thing I have is, we've touched on a lot of it, but, advice for people that are just starting out. Obviously you've been with us for a while now, but, people, you kind of touched on it that, anybody could throw up a box of coffee on a website and, say they have a coffee company, but, as you're starting out, really it's about kind of, pounding the pavement, getting out there, connecting with people. But what other pieces of advice, maybe even tools you talked about, like the branding and stuff, tools maybe that you've used, or advice that you might have for people that are just getting going, to how to kind of persevere and get over the hump of starting to make money with their business and connect with customers and grow their customer base. Any kind of advice you might have for folks starting out.
Everybody's going to be at a different place. When you say just starting out, like they may be, you could say, are they just starting out and they don't know even much about e-commerce, or they're just starting out selling coffee and they know e-commerce really well. So I'll try and give you kind of like the basics of what I would say to someone who is just new to the concept of selling entirely. But if I didn't have a list of people that were customers from somewhere else, right, and I could just send them an email or a text message, SMS, if I didn't have access to all of those tools, what I would do is I would buy the coffee myself, and I would operate sort of like on the old Mary Kay model to some extent. I would like a Tupperware model in a way. I would buy boxes of the coffee. I would either have parties or I would go to events where I know people are drinking coffee. You know who drinks a lot of coffee in your hometowns? Firefighters drink a lot of coffee. And those are really good places if you know any firefighters and you can get into the, thing. And especially if you want to start selling wholesale, which I would love to get into once I, things settle down for me a little bit. I'm a new dad right now, but
Yeah.
the thing that I would do is I would buy the coffee, I would take it home, I would give it to my friends, and I would give it to my family, and I would take it to their house, and I would serve it to them, and I would say, "What do you think?" And then I would say, if they're like, "This is amazing, where did you get this?" I would be like, "Here's the link. You should it's my coffee. You should buy it, right? You should buy a box of my coffee. Let people taste it, right? Go out to people like you would anywhere else. And what's going to happen is you're just slowly going to start to build up that customer data. Over time, you're going to build a relationship with people, and people are going to come back. And that's when you need to hit them with, well, why don't you just sign up for a monthly or bi-monthly? I had a person who I had to create a whole new Subify. I had to create a new delivery time because he needs it like every 2 weeks. He's got to have it every 2 weeks. So he's got like 2 or 3 boxes on order every 2 or 3 weeks and stuff. And I'm not huge by any means. I don't want to give people the impression that I'm like a coffee mogul or anything like that. But I do sell a lot of coffee, and I do have a significant number of monthly and biweekly and subscribers. And even if you only had like a certain small number of subscribers, a lot of times they'll buy 2 or 3 boxes and things. So that can add up and your profits can really stack in that kind of a scenario. But challenge yourself to get your first sale and challenge yourself to get your first monthly subscriber, if you will. Once you do that, you need to just say to yourself, I don't have any excuses anymore because now I know I can do it. If you've never done something, you're always going to say, oh, well, if I didn't do it, maybe I could never do it. Maybe I'm not good enough to do it. But if you've already gone through all the process of putting it on a website and you've already gone this far, you might as well go to the next level and just look somebody in the eye that you know and trust and say, will you buy a box of this from me? After you've showed to them, they've demonstrated that they like it, get it in your hands, then take it to them, let them try it, let them taste it, and then be willing to ask for the sale, be willing to ask for it directly, be willing to look them in the eye, and be willing to wait in the most awkward fashion after you've asked the question, and don't say anything.
Yeah.
And then wait for the yes. And then after you've done it, don't talk yourself out of the sale. Shut up again. Just give them the address. Here you are, right? Or if it's over the phone, you might even go so far as to be even very cheeky. And sometimes I will take their credit card over the phone and I will buy it and purchase it on the website itself to make sure that the transaction goes through. Sometimes people struggle with websites, right? Or they're on their phones and things like that. I'm like, you know what? I'll take your credit card information right on the phone if they trust you to do something like that. You have to be willing to ask the sale. And then once you've done it, it's kind of like, after that, you think, oh, you're off the hook. You're not off the hook. Now you're really on the hook. Now you really have to sell because you've shown you can do it. So all you have to do is just scale exactly what you've been doing, and you just have to do it 100,000 more times until you're rich.
It's that easy, right? No,
that easy. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, again, it's part of kind of getting that initial momentum, and the ways to get that initial momentum are really, it's making connections with people that you already know, or going and taking the coffee and going and standing in front of somebody and serving it to them. And as those orders start to compound, and as you get more comfortable with the sell, and as you start to get the name out there, it's a snowball that starts to roll, right? And that's great advice.
Yeah, it feels good too because I know that I'm serving a quality product. When I first started my shop, like 2.5, 3 years ago, it's tough because if you do drop shipping, if you do, you're doing direct to customer sales and you're doing print on demand and things like that, It can be dubious quality, different products, right? And I very carefully vetted Roastify. I got the sample box. I sat down with a piece of paper. I put star reviews next to every single one that I like, and I chose, because I love my founding fathers, right? So I chose my favorite coffee flavors to go for my favorite founders. So it's the Colombian single origin for me, the Thomas's Painkiller. That's my number one. I've always loved Thomas Paine.
Okay.
But yeah, that is my love for it is reinforcing, because if you love it, you believe in it, it's a lot easier to sell it.
Amen. Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, and that's always what we encourage people to is try it, see if you like it first. If you like it, great. If not, then there's lots and lots and lots of coffee in this world. But we're proud of obviously the various blends and roasts we had. And that was actually it was one of my questions. I have a lightning round for you of questions. I was gonna, it was actually one of the last questions was what is your favorite Roastify coffee? But you already answered that one. But maybe I can quick hit you with a couple of the other ones we have, for the lightning round, and give a little more background to who Austin Petersen is and his coffee preferences.
Yeah, no. I'm more of the light roast guy. For a while, I was the medium roast. Benjamin Franklin and his electric elixir. It has like the chocolate and notes of hazelnut. People think that means though that it's flavored coffee, but it's not. It's just the undercurrents, right? So it's coffee beans are like wine, grapes. There's a complexity to the flavors of coffee, and most people, if they've never really tried good coffee, it's kind of like if you've never really had good wine, or if you've, when I was in college, I would drink really cheap alcohol and really cheap beer, and I'm like, this is terrible. Why do people like this? Until I was not poor in college anymore, I could try really good whiskey. I could try really good wine. I could try really good coffee finally, and to know what it is. Mm-hmm. And Benjamin Franklin's Electric Elixir is a nice medium roast that is just, it hits all the right notes for a good morning brew. And then, but if you kind of need to jack things up a notch, sometimes I do. I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning, 5 days a week minimum, to go produce my show, the live Wake Up America show. So I have got to have some juice. Daddy's got to have his go-go juice. So yeah, and it helps to sell it if I'm drinking it on the show, and I can say, all right, everybody grab a box of founding flavors, and let's enjoy our coffee as we talk about the news. But I gotta have the Jeffersonian Java, but these days lately, the Madisonian mornings, those light roasts with that extra pop of caffeine. It's so good. Mm-hmm. I had somebody buy my Betsy Ross Liberty Lullaby, the decaf, and I was confused because he's kind of a man's man. He's like he's like the type that you'd see like smoking like one of those tight small cigars and huge muscles and stuff and square jaw. And he bought, of all the things I had, he bought my my decaf, and I was just kind of like. I was like, are you going soft on me, Sergeant? Like, are you okay? And he's like, no. He's like, I tell you what, he goes, I always buy the decaf version of a coffee first, because if they can make a good decaf, then they can make the rest of them are pretty good. And so I call it Betsy Ross's Liberty. Yeah, I call it Liberty Lullaby. And so this honking dude bought the Liberty Lullaby. Now he likes my other ones. But yes, so. The Madisonian morning light roast. I've got some boxes ordered right now. They're going to be hopefully coming today or tomorrow. And so I drink the light roasts when I really need that extra kick. If I want to introduce somebody who's like a regular coffee drinker to something, I'll give them the medium roasts. Dark roasts are fine. Yeah. I think it's good. A dark roast is good for me if I'm going to drink something I'm going to accompany with like a dessert, perhaps. What goes really well with a dark roast is like a nice cold, almost frozen slice of key lime pie. If you're going to have a nice, really sweet dessert, like a key lime pie with that citrus, you pair that with a dark roast coffee and that rich, full flavor with that sharp, sweet citrus that kind of cuts through it together, and that is a wicked, wicked pairing. So dark roast with desserts, this is how you can see I get a little big, but coffee, just like wine, you have wine with a steak, you pair a wine with a red steak, you have fish, white fish with coffee can be the same thing. Similar thing. You want to pair like a soft crumb cake, a nice soft crumbly delicious crumb cake. You're going to really want to enjoy something like that, maybe with a lighter or a medium roast, but like a citrusy, compact, sharp flavored key lime pie, dark roast. And so I could talk about this stuff all day. As you can see, I really enjoy coffee. Yeah. So different coffees for different occasions, right?
That's fair. So I have to ask, what's your favorite way then to make coffee? You're up at 4:30 in the morning. How are you brewing your coffee? What's the go-to kind of ritual? I know most people have their morning coffee ritual. What's Austin's go-to?
Full bean, and roast a whole roasted bean, and then my darling, my little sweet Betsy Ross, my wife, at night, right before we go to bed, she grinds the beans, and then she puts it in the drip, and then in the morning at 4 a.m. I'm blustering down on the bottom, and I hit the button. I could set it on automatic, but it's actually like a good thing. It forced me to get up and walk. Right, just go downstairs and do it. Right, I make myself get the blood pumping. It helps me wake up. So I do the drip. I do the drip in the morning on the weekdays. On the weekends, I'll do it like in a K-cup situation. And then I'll just put it in, like I have a little filter. We sell these on my website actually alongside the coffee for people who want to enjoy it, but if they don't have a regular drip coffee maker, if they want a single serve, you can buy replaceable pods. So and now you guys have pods as well. That's a new part of your business that I'm looking at. But the weekends I'll do like a single cup, but on the weekdays it's a thermos like this tall that I gotta have, and by the time by 2 hours my show's over, it's like down here,
Yeah, that was going to be the next question: is how many cups of coffee do you do in a day? Are we, the thermos? Are we at a full pot? Are we just a couple cups before noon, or where are we at on the scale here?
No, I love drugs. Give me caffeine. I know there's an obsession with purity these days, and I know a lot of people are talking about making America healthy again. But one of the great things about the United States is to be able to blow up to 600 pounds with cheeseburgers and ice cream, and enjoy a delicious cup of heavily caffeinated coffee. And I drink a lot of it on a daily basis. And, if somebody tried to get me to quit, I would say, I guess I appreciate that very much. But like, there's a few things that I'm willing to give up, and every man's got to have his vices. At least I think coffee, if anything, is like one of the least worst vices, maybe one of the least worst I've ever had. But I drink a lot of it, probably a pot a day on the weekdays. And most of that happens before noon because of my schedule. So yeah, about a pot a day.
Perfect.
A lot.
All right, I got one last question for you, and for you of all people, it actually probably an interesting question. If you were to have a cup of coffee with any historical figure, or I guess it could be living figure now as well, who would you have that cup of coffee with?
Oh man, see, a historical figure would be for me. Can I answer both? That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think. Man, that is such a good question. And I've thought about it, but I've changed my mind over the years on the people who I really admire and I respect and I look up to the most. I probably would have a cup of coffee with Winston Churchill from history. There have been a lot of discussions surrounding him in the zeitgeist, in the cultural zeitgeist in the United States. There's been a revisiting of his legacy recently, and so he's been very much on my mind, and how he shaped the modern world that we live in. When my wife and I, before we got married, she's like, "Austin, why do you watch so many World War II documentaries and things about that?" It's like, well, because this conflict shaped how the world that we live in today, all of the nations that all of the conflicts that we have today, like they all have their root in this conflict. And of course, he was a large figure in that conflict, and he very much shaped the world that we live in today. And so I think I would like to ask him lots of questions about his youth and the difficult decisions that he had to make, and how when his back was to the wall and when all of the tides were against him, how he flipped everything like a coin. I don't want to compare myself to someone like Churchill in any way, other than to suggest that there have been many times when my fortunes have been down. You mentioned my ill-fated campaigns, for example. Winston Churchill was no stranger to failure, monumental, what should have been career-ending failure, and yet he got back up and dusted himself off and then continued into the fight. And his legacy is still hotly debated today. So I think historically I would do someone like that. I think in the modern terms, like no matter who you would answer here, there would be some distaste someone would feel for your choice. But I think I would like to kind of understand better Elon Musk's mind, because of my fascination with entrepreneurialism and just sort of how I'd love to understand better from a methodological perspective how he manages to organize he still plays video games. I see him posting video games that he plays, and I can't even I want to play video games. I love video games, but I cannot find time anymore now, right? I right before my daughter was born, before my daughter was born a few months ago, I did a whole binge of Red Dead Redemption 2 because I was like, this is probably it. And things were already starting to get busy. But somehow that man manages to run he managed to be the richest man in the world and to run all of these businesses. He's also drilling a giant hole under Las Vegas to send cars around, the Boring Company, and launching rockets and dealing with all of these complicated problems. And I think that something deeply inspiring about that. I would love to have a cup of coffee with Elon Musk and ask him why he made certain decisions, and maybe ask him what he felt like his biggest mistakes. I'd love to in someone's mistakes is where you really learn. You don't learn from your successes, right? As sometimes you can blunder yourself into a success and not know how you got there. Sometimes I make sales, I have no idea where that came from, right? And so, yay, congratulations, I got lucky, right? Right. The trick is, how do you do it again? And how do you do it consistently? How do you do that? Because it's the easy way, right? Failure is always attached to the easy path, just as much as it is like the difficult path in life, or the painful decisions that you have to make. What mistakes did you make? How did you learn from them? Most people don't want to talk about their mistakes because it's embarrassing. You feel stupid. But lately I've really been trying to hold up the mirror of self-reflection, analyze myself, try and see what my blind spots are. Because when my business struggles, if sales aren't coming in, if I am not, at the end of the day, I'm working for myself, I'm an entrepreneur. If the numbers aren't there, if the sales aren't there, it doesn't matter who I hire or whatever I say. I understand. It's my responsibility. It's my fault, right? If I'm having an argument with an employee or a staffer, it doesn't matter. It's your fault for not properly delegating responsibility and authority. So if the business fails, if I don't sell, it's my fault. It's my responsibility. Somewhere along the line, the buck needs to stop here. And so I think I would like to talk to Elon Musk about his business, because it has everything that he's touched succeeded, right? I don't know everything about him, but that's what the coffee is for. Sit down and have a chat and learn a little more.
We'll learn a little bit more. Yeah, no, those are both very very strong answers, and would definitely be fascinating people to connect with. But yeah, no, that appreciate your time, appreciate you coming on, and now I guess would love for you to tell people where they can find out more about you if they're interested in checking out some Founding Flavors coffee or tuning into your show. Let the people know where they can find Austin Petersen, where they can learn more about you, where they can hear more of your melodious voice, your commentary, where they can connect with you.
It is melodious. I do sometimes break out into song on my shows. So you can find the Wake Up America show. My handle online is AP for Liberty. And that's pretty much everywhere, whether it's X or on Instagram or on Facebook. If you type in AP, the number 4, AP for Liberty, then you're going to find me. The brand that I've grown out of that is the For Liberty shop. So there's at forlibertyshop.com is where I sell my delicious Founding Flavors coffee. But if you want to find the Wake Up America show, it's Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. And we stream on a bunch of the other social platforms as well. But I'm a Rumble forward community because, sometimes the takes are a little too spicy for them. I call it the mainstream alternative media where they're like, they're like, we don't like to associate with those Jeffersonians and the Washingtonians. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I sometimes dwell with the rebels and the miscreants over there. So find me at AP for Liberty, and if you liked what you heard today, reach out if you have questions. I don't mind mentoring people and helping people to be successful because I know that's good for our country.
Absolutely. Well, no, I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us a little bit about your story and about the brand that you've built. And we're excited to continue to watch it grow and watch it flourish. So thanks so much for your time, Austin.
Thanks, David.